Continuing debates, the honourable member for Essex.
Well, thank you so much. Mr. Speaker. Half of me wants to stand on a point of order and speak about the great colleague of mine for suggesting that perhaps he's better looking than I am. But we'll let the public be the jury on that, both the judge and the jury. We don't need that. And ironically, although I don't smell like smoked meat, I did appreciate the fact he spoke about the firefighters in the field. Yeah. Because the truth of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, I was a firefighter for 7.5 years. I put out many a wheat fire, grass fires, and many of which were actually caused, unfortunately, due to our farming industry. So I appreciate him bringing that up. It brings me great pride today to stand here in this place, Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the fantastic residents of Essex who sent me here. So I say thank you to them. And before I dive into, in great support of the member for Cypress Hills Grasslands Private Members Bill, Bill C-294, I do want to just send out a heartfelt thanks and best wishes to the firefighters across Canada who are battling so dearly and desperately the raging wildfires. Speaker, I've said it before and I'm proud to say it. My father was the milkman in Essex, Lewis Dairies. And as I always say, am I ever happy my mother opened the door when he dropped off that milk to the house, because otherwise I wouldn't be here today. And the reason I say that, Mr. Speaker, is I've heard more stories from Dad about how equipment has evolved, how farming equipment, both in the dairy industry, but also in the grain industry, how it's evolved. And I know it to be true because I grew up on a farm. I myself I do sharecropping, so I have my own farm of my own. And I see the various utility equipment that goes onto a tractor and/or goes onto a combine. And bless my wife and my daughter for loving horses so much, all 5 of them, and now we're getting into hay. And so I suppose it's easy for me to speak to this because all of the different farming takes a whole bunch of different utility equipment to not only harvest but to plant these crops. And so, Speaker, when I look at this equipment and I look at the interchangeability, the opportunity to save a few $1,000s for a thrasher from one company to another that perhaps wouldn't or couldn't interchange with a Case tractor, with a John Deere tractor, with a New Holland tractor. But then I also take it one step further and I say, okay, so the conversations I have, especially in Essex, we're somewhat landlocked in that we're surrounded by 3 bodies of water, and land is, quite frankly, a premium, and it's darn expensive. Yeah. But it's really, really expensive and almost unheard of, not just for our next generations, our young adults, to be able to afford a home and start a family, but to take over a family legacy, which is the farm. And so they need every opportunity, every possibility possible to ensure that they can even begin to think about taking over the local farm. I got 2 amazing sons and an amazing daughter. Both my sons, they spend a lot of time in the farm. They're grease monkeys, and I'm darn proud of them for being grease monkeys. And they repair a lot of the farm equipment that, quite frankly, I break. And whether it's cutting the laneways or plowing in the headlands, there's always a screw, there's always a nut, there's always a bolt or a washer that just doesn't fit anymore. It gets worn out. But the cost to repair that, Mr. Speaker, the cost that our farming community goes through because something isn't interchangeable is absolutely astronomical. And so when I think about that same utility that I cut the fence rows on, and we blow a belt, and I'm sure the member from Grasslands would know how expensive a farming belt is, especially when you got to bring it in from overseas. Yeah. And so if we start today, if we start in this beautiful country today to make the equipment interchangeable, the lives of farmers today, but the future for the next generations will be that much easier. Yeah. Speaker, my brother-in-law, Rob Reed, has been with Ridgetown Agricultural College, a subsidiary, if you will, or a sister college to Guelph University, for a number of years. He has been in charge of the dairy and the hog, but also they do all of the work with the college, training the students, the future generations, with regard to the equipment. And so I will happily be married this year to my lovely, lovely wife, Allison, for 25 years. So I've known Rob for about 30 years. And I've heard the stories, the trials, and the tribulations at the college. In that, because they have to really watch the money that they spend, when they spend a whole bunch of money on one type of equipment, and 5 and 6 and 7 and 10 years later, when that equipment, half of the equipment comes to its end of its useful life, then they have to buy new additions to that equipment. But the tractor still works, but the plow or the thrasher or the planter needs to be replaced, but they're not interchangeable. So therefore, Mr. Speaker, they have to basically start from zero. And what does that do? Well, it doesn't only cost the college. Ultimately, what it's costing are the students, Mr. Speaker. And so as if it wasn't tough enough to go to college now, and as if it's not tough enough to excite future young adults to get into farming and take over their family business, now the cost of tuition just went crazy, right through the roof. And so, Mr. Speaker, this private member's bill only checks the boxes, all the important boxes, of what the future of Canadian farming looks like going forward. Yep. Mr. Speaker, you know, I think about Volans Farm Equipment, just around the corner from my house, and how many times I've taken my zero-turn lawnmower there, and you know, as was previously mentioned about a nut falling out the bottom, or a worn-out U-joint, if you will. And if it wasn't for Volans Farm Equipment, Mr. Speaker, well, I don't have a lot of money in my pockets here today, but I have a whole lot less, because they are so unique and so excellent in how they are able to adapt various pieces of equipment together. But, Mr. Speaker, now we're getting into the digital age. And what this allows now for is an interface of two digital systems to come together to put two pieces of critical infrastructure to feed Canadians, to put food on the tables of Canadians, and quite frankly, to feed the world, but also to make life much, much, much more exciting and more affordable for our farming industry. And Mr. Speaker, Essex, as I mentioned, is a very, very small area, again landlocked, but a very vital area. As a matter of fact, the majority of the grains that are produced in Essex, should put a lot of face in here, go straight to our distilleries. So if you like Crown Royal, you'll probably like the fact that we grow a lot of corn. And so, Mr. Speaker, now I've got everybody's attention, so they probably know just how important this private member's bill is. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, I'm a very proud son of an amazing, amazing father that taught me a whole bunch about farming, as did my grandfather, taught me a lot about farming while he was still alive. I'm proud to be partners with Greg Eiler, fantastic farmer that farms my land alongside myself. And I really want to say thank you one final time to my dear friend, somebody that represents Cypress Hills grasslands incredibly well, for bringing this private member's bill forward. Mr. Speaker, thank you so much for this House's time.